So I have a bunch of questions because it's been a while since I've watched it. So I was like, okay, I had to remember. So instead of starting with the bad guy this time, or the supposed bad guy, TJ, we'll start off with our I don't want to call you guys side players because you're really not, because the movie wouldn't be the same without. But kind of get me caught up because I haven't talked to Ken in a while. After you guys did the film circuit, tell me, what did he decide to do, or how did you guys do after Art is Alive as far as with the film?
Well, I guess I would say as far as the festival is concerned, we didn't really do much more with it as far as going on to festivals or anything else. And we're actually, right now, I can tell Frank and TJ that we're working on the sequel right now. So we're hoping to film in November. So I'm asking Frank and TJ to think about it if that's an option for you.
This is a good thing.
Yeah, let's do it.
That actually brings up a really good lead question. Why a sequel? You know what I mean? I mean, most people who watch that movie, the instantaneous response is obvious because you see what happens clearly. And then you're like, okay, why continue with this? So I guess my question to you and Ken is, what do you feel could be beneficial in terms of continuing the story? Because I'm a huge advocate for that, by the way. But why do you think audiences will embrace a secondary sequel?
Good question. But Ken wrote a really good follow-up to it. And it kind of brings the other characters kind of to the forefront with regards to, their backstories and why they chose to do what they did. And, we're in that early stages, like I said, Frank and TJ are just hearing this for the first time of, hey, we're ready to shoot, or we're not ready to shoot, but we're close. And so we're going through that. Do we tie it in? Do we have the sequel hold its, stand on its own two legs without needing to have seen tit for tat? So we're still in the early stages of it, but it was something that we wanted to do, I guess, about a year ago or so, guys, and we just never got it done.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I assume that obviously you want to use Frank and TJ because of their incredible ability to act, which is a foregone conclusion. But can you give us a sneak peek? Can you tell us anything about it? Because of course now I'm anxious. I'm like, just tell me something.
I don't know. I think we
come
gotta
on,
wait
give me
until
something.
you see it. Don't you think? Don't you guys think we should let them see it once it's?
I think Ken probably is still tinkering with it a little bit, and there. I think that also one thing that I think really comes out in Tit for Tat and what Ken is working on is the effect on the family. It's not just the player, but it affected the wife, friends, family. And I'll throw out there, a couple of months ago, I read in one of the science journals, the CTE is really affects other sports. I read an article about how the players or the athletes for the luge and bobsled, the Olympic players have also CTE, and it's obviously not a contact sport, but the rattling and the shaking, and that sport skews very young, and they were seeing it in people in their 20s.
Gosh.
And it's not reversible. So I think the safety issues go beyond just football, which is where this started. And that threw up a red flag on how prevalent is this in other sports.
Oh, certainly. Absolutely. This is a hot button topic and has been for quite some time. I give great props to any filmmaker that's willing to address such a sensitive subject and doing it in such a delicate way, obviously. All right, so you won't give me any material information on that. So let's start off doing new and go back to old, which is we'll start with Frank and tell a listening audience who you are and what you've been up to lately since Tit for Tat aired.
Frank DiNapoli. I've been doing a few short films. I really look at the subject matter, and I've done a few things that relate to health and science. I played a doctor, an oncologist. Topics that hit home, that I think are important messages to get out, such as Tit for Tat was. So I've done a few of those. Did a web series. That was a comedy web series, which was completely different. So that was a little bit more of a comic relief for me to do that. But obviously, the pandemic has slowed things down a bit. So looking forward to, how to get things going again. But but safely.
Oh,
But
you
I
betcha.
think storytelling and the topics really matter to me a lot.
Nice. I like that. I'm very impressed by that, actually. Now, TJ, we know that you got married. You had a boo-boo. So we have to ask, how's the boo-boo? How's parenthood?
She's doing well. She's 13 months
Oh
now.
my God.
She's walking around and hiding the remote controls and and everything else.
I saw she had her first dunk the other day, right? I
Yep,
saw her first
yep,
basketball
Yes.
dunk.
yes, that's right, that's right. As soon as she started walking, I started training her.
Oh, that's so cute. Now, do you find that fatherhood, with being a father and being a husband now, obviously, does that, has that curtailed? I mean, we all know it curtails things to a bed, but are you still able to maintain and try to go out and get jobs in the acting world?
Well,
Even with the
actually,
kids?
I've even before I became a father, I was kind of transferring over to more of the voiceover world.
Ah,
So like I have a studio now in my apartment, and I've been pretty much carving a nice career in voiceover,
nice.
um, commercials, narrations, corporate things that people will never see, radio commercials, internet streaming commercials, all those types of things. And honestly, I think Tit for Tat might have been the last on camera thing I actually did.
Oh my gosh.
And I've been behind the mic, doing things for like Uber and the Weather Channel, and I did something recently for Jacksonville Jaguars, and I get to do it kind of from the comfort of my home. So,
Sure.
so
Kind of
it's
cool.
been, yeah, I've been able to just kind of carve a nice career out of myself here behind the mic.
Are you going to go back in front of the camera? I mean, is that your overall intention, or are you kind of content where you are?
I'm happy behind the mic. I'm kind of, despite what you kind of see, I'm a kind of a shy person, so being behind the mic kind of works for me. But
Sure.
for the right projects, and people that I've met along the way, occasionally they'll reach out and be like, hey, we want to do this eventually, the sequel to this. Some other directors that I've worked with in the past, they have some things coming up and they've reached out, and I'm like, yeah, I'm more than happy to get back in front of the camera, because I do like it. But just for my life right now and how everything's going, this just works really well.
I'm just amazed that you have a child that young and it's quiet there and the baby is not in the room
I
right
think my
now.
wife has her like locked in the bedroom. I did hear her crying during one of the movies, but
Oh gosh, it's very common. I get you.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. Provenzano has had some changes, some things going on. I see that you have some success happening, my friend.
I've been blessed, knock on wood. I've been pretty busy, even through the quarantine. I decided to not wait around for things to happen, and I started creating. And I ran an online film festival called the From a Distance Festival, which
Yes.
ran for a couple months in the early parts of the pandemic. And I really had two goals out of it when I was talking with Gabby Fay, who ran it with me. Two things. One was to give filmmakers, their cast and crews, the opportunity to share their work. And two, to have people around the world forget about the pandemic for 10 minutes at a time.
Sure.
And that was it. That was the only goals we had. We made it free of charge to everybody, and it was fun. We had about 62 films, went really well. And then as soon as that ended, we started another one called the Star Festival. And that one was completely different. It was first of its kind. It was a self-tape festival for actors. And so that went really, really well. And we had some great judging, and everyone involved received detailed feedback from all the judges that were involved with regards to what they could do to make their self-tapes better now that self-tapes are here.
Sure.
And that's kind of what I've been doing now. So, but I've been pretty, lucky with the commercial work, and I've got some short stuff that I'm working on right now. And yeah, I'm just having a blast. I truly am.
And folks that are watching this today, you might notice that everyone on the panel is not unattractive, which means attractive people who are actors are always working. Case in point, my actor to the right of me, obviously the pretty faces here, always get the wonderful work. In fact, Mr. Provenzano, I know that my Michael had a question for you in reference to the festival, because I had just been speaking, we had been speaking about it. So I said I would let him pop on my panel here real quickly and say something, or ask, he can ask away since he's here.
Hi, gents. Phenomenal work, by the way. Very much enjoyed it. Michael, I haven't seen you since Sydney's casting outing, I think it was.
It's been a while, no doubt.
Way back when. You basically already answered my question. I was just, I guess, to elaborate a little bit. I was curious, what made you really make the play? It's a typical question. What made you make the plunge from being, as I say, just an actor to festival founder, advocate for the arts and all that? Kind of a big step, would you say?
No. I looked at it from a standpoint of, hey, everybody's forced to stop what they were doing, everybody. And we're all living through that together. And I got lucky at the very beginning. I did a couple, I did an Instagram series where it was in 3 episodes. And then I did a 48-hour festival that was everything was online. And after that, I was like, I want to do stuff on my own. I want to create. I don't want to wait for somebody to ask me, hey, would you like to do whatever the case may be? So I reached out to, Rich Henkels. I reached out to Rich and said, hey, I want to do something. And he goes, oh, great idea. Let's do something today. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. We got to find some actors. And so we ran a Zoom for Dummies short, for lack of a better term. And it was like 15 minutes long. And after we finished it, and we made it, it was kind of like a comedy of actors using Zoom for the very first time. So I was the host, and I was, and people are yelling at me for trying to unmute my microphone and all that stuff. So it was fun. And then once we finished it, we're like, well, we can't do that again. That's going to be boring, right? So we created something called Quarantine Island. So we created our own web series that was about 6 or 7 episodes. That was just fun, it was kind of like, hey, let's just get some actors acting again. And that's all it was about. And so everything that I've done during the quarantine has all been to get people to do what they love. And that was really all my basis on the stuff that I was working on. And it's thankfully it's starting to grow, but I do love acting, and I'm not letting that go by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm just, like I said, I'm having fun. I just feel blessed that I get to do it. And I just pray that I get to keep on doing it.
Even acting on Zoom counts, right?
It's you're creating. I had a casting director who said, I was talking to her probably like 2 or 3 months after the Instagram series I did. And she goes, man, I really love your acting performance in when you fired everybody. And I'm like thinking back now, I'm going, what is she talking about? And I'm like, oh, was that? So it was, that was on, that was on Instagram. It wasn't Zoom, but the premise was still the same. And it doesn't matter if you're online or you're in person. You look at like the self-tape stuff nowadays or auditions, we're all adjusting to what we have to work with.
That's right. I've been rehearsing endlessly for a feature film, all on Zoom, and they actually wanted to cobble together some of the Zoom sessions into a little teaser for investors and whatnot. So all of a sudden I'm part actor, part cinematographer, and you just got to arrange everything just so. Yep. And somehow it came off pretty nicely. So
very cool.
Well, I'm curious to ask the two of you, meaning Frank and TJ, of course. I'm assuming, and maybe not so much TJ, because I know you said you've been removed somewhat, but for you, Frank, how has the experience been? Because I presume that you've had to do Zoom auditions and things like that. And how are you getting accustomed to this, what they call the new norm in terms of actors in their life and trying to get attention during this crisis?
I think it's allowed people that are doing small projects and independent things to get seen. Because, things on, like Mike said, Instagram and YouTube, there's a lot more appetite for it. And obviously everybody's housebound or largely housebound now.
Right.
There's a plethora of material, but I think things are getting seen. And I think it also heightens I think that self-tapes, auditions are going to be the way of the future. I think
Yeah.
I think it's efficient for the casting directors, for their time, and that's the thing they have the least of is time. But I think it allowed us to perfect that and work on it, because I think that's going to be the norm, regardless of when this lifts for all of us. And I think that it allowed us to get better at it, because I think we're going to have to do it. But to the point made before, you can do a great job and tell a great story on Zoom, even though you're all in separate different rooms. And I did one where we couldn't film. It was on the table. We're going to film it in the winter or when things get better. But we did a version of it, or an edited version of it, on Zoom, and it actually worked out better than we thought. I mean, we rehearsed it to death, but so that when we actually taped it, it was just really just taping it. But I think that this allowed us to do that. It's not going.
Well, it's definitely different, that's for sure. And some actors have some great feedback. Like it's hopeful. I'm very hopeful to hear when actors talk about, yes, you can still tell a good story. You can still do the job. For instance, look at Tit for Tat. Now, TJ is physical and he's in people's faces, and it's kind of like, I wonder how you could do that right now. You know what I mean? Because they're all like, oh, you can't film closely and you can't do this and this and this. So imagine if you're doing another adaptation, how is that going to look now? You know what I mean? Would that stretch you as an actor, TJ? Let's say if somebody said, okay, you can't be in somebody's face, you can't be right next to them, you can't manhandle them. How would that have affected your character? Meaning, let's say if they reincarnate you for some reason, is that going to be more of a challenge? Are you going to have to kind of up the ante as far as improv and other things, because you can't necessarily use your physical presence?
I mean, I think so. I think probably when it comes to those types of situations, a lot is going to be relied on, like the close-up and being able to really work the camera on that close-up to make up for that physical distance that we have to have.
Sure.
So that's going to be probably relying more on emotion and facial expression and those type of things to make up for the lack of physicalness that I'd be able to have.
Oh, certainly. You betcha. Now, Tit for Tat has been described as a three-dimensional story, meaning that it tells three different stories. Frank has a story, Mike has a story, and TJ has a story. Clearly, if anybody has watched this before, we all know that TJ is at the center of everything. And however, Frank and Mike react to that. So let's start with TJ. At the core of you, I've always seen the yin and the yang, which is on one side of the fence, it's the struggle of dealing with what's happening to your mind. And then on the other side of the fence, the actual physical makeup. My question to you is, which was more important for you to emphasize upon? What was happening in your head or the disintegration of your body? Because obviously we all know football is a very physical sport.
It was more what's happening in my head. When I was looking at and kind of like researching CTE and maybe looking at like interviews from family members of people who have had CTE and might have died already or went on. A lot of what they had mentioned was like the emotional ups and downs and hills and valleys. So that was a lot more about what was going on in his head and dealing with the pain. The physicalness and body deterioration. Honestly, I believe that if it wasn't for the head injury, he would still be able to play football just fine. Mm-hmm. So for me, it wasn't really about the deterioration of the body, but it was more about what was happening in the mind, dealing with the pain of the disease and how that affects me.
Now to you, Mike, and to you, Frank, I didn't ask you this before, but I'm curious. Did you all also take some extensive time to research CTE or just to get a good background on it? Or were you knowledgeable enough about it to kind of walk in and say, all right, I'm familiar with the subject, I can pull this off? Or was there extensive time for you to invest in this prior to shooting?
I read a lot about it more. And the thing that I kind of kept in my head while we were filming it was, and it reminds me of what we're talking about right now in a pandemic. Do you listen to science or do you listen to politics? And what went through my head was guilt and shame, because I think the doctor really knew that this guy should be playing. but he was pulled in several different directions of there's money at stake, and I think he got swayed into the wrong decision,
Gotcha.
which is what's happening now.
Oh, you betcha. Mike?
Right.
Well, for me, this was my first short film that I ever did. So I had a lot going on in my head for that one, from all the things that I didn't know that I didn't know, you know what I mean, about filmmaking in general, so I did a little research on CTE, and I kind of understood the premise behind it, and I also understood that I'm playing the commissioner of the NFL, right? So it is what it is. I'm playing the lead guy, or I'm playing the top guy. And you know how everything rolls downhill from the top, right? And that's kind of the thought process that went behind my head for my character. But like I said, since it was my first one, I mean, I was even, focused on the words and focused on doing it right and not screwing up. And so all that stuff was going through my head at the same time. And I think after we finished filming, I got a much better understanding about CTE and what the challenges it creates for people.
I don't know if I mentioned this at the screening, and I guess I should have, but every time I look at you and Frank, I keep thinking to myself, Frank really should have been in Mike's role, and Mike really should have been in Frank's role. It just seems like you both might have been just as comfortable doing the opposite. Would that have worked for either of you?
Yeah, I think it could have. I think that, Mike's character was more like, there's money, go for it, get him on the field. And it's just a matter of switching gears into that. And I was kind of like, like I said before, kind of like on the fence with that.
Sure.
Trying to by both parties, which was wrong. I think they're both wrong. They were both at fault.
Correct. You bet.
I mean, for me, I think we could have went either way, but I think the roles we had, we were in the right seats for this, I think.
You bet. Yeah, I mean, it played off very well. I mean, regardless, I think you would have been fine either way, but it really did. TJ was the perfect choice, obviously, to be the victim, the person who is trying to sort out where he's going and where his life's going to be now that he's at where he's at. Because Ken's not here, of course, we want to talk about him. As we know, Ken created this movie and did quite well with the production value, the casting, the storytelling. It was all point on, clearly. But talk to the audience a bit about what it's like to work with Ken, and more importantly, how he made you comfortable to be more creative.
I think TJ should open with that one.
Okay. Okay. I mean, for the most part, for me, he was like very flexible and just kind of let me bring what I thought, the role deserved. I don't know if y'all could just hear the baby just then, but she just
He's such a dad now. Did you hear the baby?
Yeah. But for me, it was great working with Ken. He kind of gave me the freedom. Like, there were a couple of things I can't really remember offhand because it's been a while, but there were a couple of things that he really wanted us to make, a point of. But for the most part, he gave you creative license. Like the audition process that I went through, I think it was like 2 or 3 auditions. I went out to his house with actually another actor at one point, and so by the time it came time to film, he had already seen me do the stuff a few times, and I was pretty comfortable with the fact that he was comfortable with what I was bringing to the role. And for me, it was just trying to breathe life into this character.
And you breathed a lot of life into that character. Scared the hell out of me the first couple of times.
Sure
I was like, damn, he's got some anger issues and he is really pissed and he's going to do some damage.
I'm not like that at all.
That's a sign of a good actor. I say that all the time. I'm like, when you bring about a performance where somebody looks back and they're like, that's not the person I know. They're able to slip into character, slip right back out. That is a good question for you, actually. How hard was it for you to shake them off? Because not every actor can let them go when they leave.
It was the drive home from Jersey. Pretty much, you kind of get in this mode, especially because we did do the filming in, what was that, like 48 hours, 72
I
hours?
think so.
Yeah.
We did it in a short time, so I kind of stayed in that mode for a little while, but by the time I got home after sitting in traffic for a little while, I was I kind of shook it off.
I gotcha. Well, and of course, because you mentioned it was shot in such a short amount of time. So talk to listeners a bit about if they're contemplating doing filmmaking. We talk a lot about methodology and how to make things better on a tighter budget and how to find better actors, etc. So tell us a bit about the advantages of doing a shorty, because it's a very small amount of time versus having the means and the money and more time, basically. If you had your way, would you, and you could do it again, would you have spent more time on it? Or do you really stand by the decision to kind of do it within a weekend?
Who's taking it? If it were me, all right. If it were me, I think this one went perfect because I think, TJ had such a huge part in this, and he had to go so far with this that
Sure.
I think the way he handled it was the right way to do it. I don't think, could he have done that over, a week's time frame or whatever the case might be, or how many days it took? Probably, but I don't think it was necessary. And I think, however, I do think that when you take a little bit longer to do something, you can get different angles. There's other things that you're going to get from it that you may not get when you do something so quickly.
Sure, absolutely. Frank, what's your take?
I think it started with the script, and Ken really shared it with us. And every time he made an edit or a change, he asked us what we thought. So, it's all on the page. I hate
Sure.
that it sounds cliched, but it really was. And we talked through it, understood the characters, understood what he wanted from us. And, we were a part of the process when he was still tinkering with the script.
Gotcha. Now for you, TJ, of course, being more the main character, so to speak, I imagine there was more dialogue, more obviously direct preparation. So again, I asked the question, would you have been more comfortable having more time, or was it okay with you to have this just limited amount to kind of leap and get to the task?
I was okay with it because I had enough time prior. It's not like, from casting to the time we filmed was in a short time period. So I had enough time to really, get into the character, get the words in my head, learn the script. And I think that was probably the key to it, because I had so much time prior to learn all those lines and let that just kind of sit and marinate with me
Sure.
for so long that we could come in, knock it out, and then be able to leave. If it was like a short time period between the time we were officially casted and the time we started filming, I think we would have needed more time. But because we had that time frame, especially me, because it was a lot of lines. So because I had all that time to really let that marinate with me for a little while, we were able to get it done quickly.
Sure, I getcha. Now remind everybody, because I love pointing these facts out. What was the budget for this movie?
Oh, I don't know.
I
don't
oh,
know.
come on. One of you should know this.
Hold on, what was the question? Say that again.
The budget, remember? How much
Oh.
did we spend to make this movie? Because from memory, I want to say it was really small. Right? Like really small.
Like really tiny. Yeah.
I know, right? That's the cool part about it. I'm like, look at the kick-ass product they made with like no money. That was the whole point. I'm like,
Hold on, was there a budget?
yes.
There was?
No, you just all showed up and we're like, okay, we'll just.
We had to
you know.
pay for what I was drinking.
Yeah, exactly.
It amazed me that he spent
Yep.
so little. There was such a little budget, and he did so very much with it, meaning the cinematography was not poor. The casting was not inadequate. The storytelling was lovely. He's a great storyteller, as a matter of fact. He just did another screenplay that he sent to me, which I was so impressed by. That begs to ask the question, of course. This movie, not only, like we mentioned before, talks about the physical part, but also the psychological part. So had any of you had experience or even remote experience with a psychological disorder such as this that you could bring to the table, which made it easier to transition into your roles? Because sometimes the experience is the best guide.
Well, me personally, no.
Okay.
No.
That's a heck of an impression to give. I mean, that's a heck of a performance for somebody who's never, even had close proximity to that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That for me, that just came with, like I said, the research that I did and just kind of really focusing on what family members were saying it was like being with that person, and then trying to just portray that as best as I could.
Gotcha. And you folks?
I think that what I said before about the impact on the family lives in the behavior is so unpredictable and varies from moment to moment that you don't know what you're going to get every day. So there's a fear that the family lives with when they're living with somebody who's affected by this. And they as the movie shows, they could become very violent and very dangerous.
Gosh. And you, Mike?
Yeah, for me, I answer your original question with regards to Ken and working with him. Working with Ken and Mike and Yoko and Frank and TJ, that was it. It was all of us. Everyone was great to work with. I mean, from my audition was over Skype, right, with Mike and Ken. And so I did it from my bedroom, I was done and I was like, oh, that was really cool. I wonder how it'll turn out, and then you got booked for it, which was awesome.
Sure.
I mean, for me though, for my character, I have a business background, so it was pretty cool for me to go from, hey, there was times I was a jerk at work, there's times I had to be a hard ass at work, and I used that for my character's personality or style or what have you. And it was, as we said, I just had a blast doing it. And I mean, for me, when I walked in, and TJ, you were already going at it, I was like, oh my God, what's going on down there?
I was going to ask that, so TJ, did your wife make you super mad, or did somebody really have to just get in your face and then you're like, that's it, I'm done?
No,
now.
I think I just didn't eat breakfast or something.
Oh, God. It's the automatic turn into, I'm a demon. Because no, really, it's interesting about how you just, you're holding your head and then all of a sudden you just start losing it. And it's like, just that buildup alone. Sometimes actors talk a lot about how, they have to be prompted to cry. They have to be prompted to do some of these things that aren't always natural for us. And most of us just don't walk around that furious, and so filled with anguish and anxiety. And so it's a buildup, and I imagine it's probably a rush for you, a physical rush, meaning that's why I talked about letting it go. The recovery can sometimes be, a bit challenging, I can imagine. When you guys look at Tit for Tat now, do you feel, let's say, for instance, is this something your film could be helpful to the youth football camps, or have you given any consideration, or have talked to Ken about maybe we should take this and send this off to where it can be helpful, where it's not just entertaining, it's actually educating and making people aware and passing things on? Do you think that's possible?
Personally, I do think it's possible. We haven't gotten deep talking about it. Mike Stein and I talked a little bit about that, because we were like, if we do the sequel, what are we going to do with it? What's the goal? What's the objective to it? And how do we tie in, or do we tie in Tit for Tat? And so we felt good about tying it in and having some flashbacks or something. Hey, there's your little in. We're going to have some flashbacks in the one. I gave you a little taste. Right? That's all I give you. But I think it's an important story that needs to be out there. And, there's, the other film that I did that, and I'm not trying to talk about the other film, but I did another film that was similar in nature, where it was a really important issue. And it's starting to get attention because that one went into 100 or 150 festivals. They went bananas in putting it into the number of festivals that they did. But they did that on purpose and by design, and that was kind of their plan. And so I think this one, there's still the opportunity to do that, I think. And maybe once we have this next one completed, maybe we do some kind of tie-in and then take it to another level where it is able to open some eyes, shed some light on what really can occur. And hey, folks, I think people understand that there's issues with just the physical, sport of football. But Frank, you had a great point with regards to other athletics that have the same issue. That,
Absolutely.
I didn't know that, but it's a huge important challenge that we need to help reduce, the amount of people that get this.
Oh, right. And that's what I was going to ask Frank too. Like I had said, is it possible? I mean, in your mind, are you happy and content in saying, okay, people have seen our film, they've absorbed it, they liked it, or do you want to take it to that next level and to be able to effectuate change or some kind of, clear awareness?
There needs to be a trust factor with the people that you're playing for or working for.
Sure.
And hopefully this would give people seeing this, would give them permission and the comfort level to call something out that they know is, or they see that's wrong.
Sure.
Because, there was a cover up. And how prevalent is this, and how much pressure are people being put on just because for financial reasons?
Right. Oh, absolutely. You betcha. Now, Mike, without asking too many questions, is it fair to be able to ask you in the next story, is this going to still primarily circulate around that particular subject, or are you going to widen things up a little bit? You know what I mean? Are we going to be looking at a bit of a bigger picture and maybe not just the C2? Because we all know it's very heavy on that in the first chapter here.
I just don't recall.
He's just not wanting to tell
just
me.
Don't recall.
I see how that works. I get it.
I see how you tried to sneak that one.
I know. That's a journalist. I'll just keep asking this way, and then eventually you'll just give me what I want. It's just one of those things. We don't want to forget to mention, obviously, like you said, you start out with Yoko. I'm so proud of Yoko. Yoko has really gone to the next level. His cinematography is just above par. He's doing the podcasting thing. He is just doing everything. I mean, he is just a gem. I can't even talk enough about him. And of course, Mike Stein, who is not with us. You guys have worked with him before. So Mike Stein, of course, his capacity was the musical component to this. Mm-hmm. So if one of you or all of you could talk a bit about, tell us a bit about Mike Stein and, of course, why people should want to check out his stuff, because he's not here to toot his own horn, basically.
I think his music set the tone for the movie.
Absolutely.
And Mike, I don't. When I was there, I looked at Mike as kind of the director, because I auditioned for him and Ken, so I kind of looked at him more that way. But you're right, he nailed the music, and he's doing it. He's living that dream out in California now, and he's stepping it up a notch, and he's doing a lot of great stuff.
You betcha. Absolutely. Now, the other question that I wanted to address with you folks, because I have your ear and you guys are all actors. So when we look to the future of filmmaking, and more importantly, we've got festivals that are kind of transitioning from one place to another. The future of live cinema is all up in a roar. Are you guys feeling somewhat hopeful, or somewhat just hinging in terms of where do we go? What do we do? Where do you kind of stand with all of this? How are you maintaining a proper balance and trying to be optimistic about the future, because everything is just kind of hanging in the balance for right now? You're actors who want to be seen, and you want to be seen hopefully in a live capacity. So where do you stand with all that now? And where should people, if they're contemplating, do I even want to get into this? Should they still pursue an occupation in the arts?
I think there has to be optimism in that it'll come back. It may not be in the same format, and there may be other formats like what we're talking about with Zoom. Look at major productions like Saturday Night Live at home. I think things like that have given permission that it's okay not to be together, and there are other formats. Maybe they're not as rich and as fancy as we're used to, but you can still tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
It may not, the business may not be as robust for a while, and I think it'll be tough for the next year, and we're going to have to all accept that. Right. But I think we'll come back in one way, shape, or form. Live theater may take longer.
Yes. Oh, I agree. The Broadway in particular, absolutely. TJ, where do you stand on things with that? Because I know you're kind of, like I said, you're taking a path over here, but still.
Well, I'm still very optimistic. Being here in New York, you kind of see where shows are starting to begin filming again, and like Frank said, it might be different for a little while, but I don't think it will be this way forever. I don't think this is just how it's going to be going forward. So I would always encourage anyone who has a passion for the arts to go ahead and follow that, because you adjust. If it's the art and it's your passion, you will adjust, because it's not really about the situation you're in. It's about telling your story, doing what you're passionate about, and you'll figure out a way to do that within any situation.
Sure.
So continue. Anyone who's interested in it, please follow it.
Amen to that. And Mike, what about you?
I'm Mr. Optimism. This is going to end. It's a matter of when. It's not an if, it's a when. And when and there's proof that it's already begun, because commercial work is it's open again. It's happening. TJ said it right. There's stuff happening up in New York right now. There's TV shows that are coming back. They're starting. I have a friend that's out in LA who is on a soap. It's starting back in October. So things are happening again. So it's cool to see that things are opening up again. I think the whole COVID conscious is not going to go away, and I think people need to do the right thing. And if you're not healthy, you shouldn't go. For me though, a big thing is you got to advocate for yourself, because there's jobs out there that are very COVID, the union jobs all follow a standard, right? Because there's a standard that they need to follow.
Right.
The non-union stuff, they're supposed to follow a standard, but do they follow a standard? So as an actor, I think it's on all of us to ensure our well-being, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all human beings. It's not, and COVID doesn't care about, is it a short film? Is it a commercial? Is it a union job? Is it a non-union job? It doesn't matter. But I think things are going to open back up. I think it's people are chomping at the bit to do it. I think it needs to happen properly. And there's ways to do things. But I agree with TJ's other comment as well. Of if you want to get into this business and you've got the thick skin for it, do it. Go after it. If you're really dreaming about this, you got to go after it. And if you're on the fence, maybe not right now is not the right time. But if this is what you want to do, don't let anything stop you. Don't let a pandemic stop you. It's because a pandemic's not going to be here forever. It's just like everything else. Things start and they stop, or they pause, or they shift, or they change. Live your life and enjoy the life we have.
That's awesome. I like that. I don't want to forget to ask, so we'll start with Frank and go down. If folks want to find you on social media or otherwise, where would they go?
Facebook, IMDb.
And TJ?
www.tjthomas.net or @TJThomasNY on any social media.
AKA the guy that scares the hell out of all of us. And Mike?
For me, it's www.mikeprov.com, or all social media. It's @Mike A. Provenzano on everywhere.
I can't thank you guys enough for coming in and doing this. I was so happy to be able to resurrect it. And when Ken said yes, I was absolutely elated. And I also did not know that you were talking about doing the sequel. And that brings a component up, because I was going to reveal to you while you were on here that I had just literally sent a note to Ken last night saying to him, I have new distribution partners. So do you want me to send Tit for Tat for distribution? So now my question is, should I have done that or should I have waited?
I don't think there's any harm in it.
It's fine.
I think it's awesome. I was like, I have like 3 new partners, and I'm like, they'll take shorts. And I was like, why wouldn't I send this for distribution? And then when you said, oh, we're going to be doing another one, I'm like, oh boy, should I just wait for the second one? I'll have to wait to see what he has to say. But I was like, every time that I watch that movie, it's just, I have a fondness for it. And I'm like, not enough. I just feel like not enough people have seen it. And I'm like, what's the best way to get them to get it seen? Obviously, you get distribution, and it may not be the prettiest deal, but I'm like, these are some great distributors, and they're looking for new content, and it opens it up to both the U.S. and an international market. So we'll see what Ken has to say. I'm just excited that you're resurrecting it, that you're doing another one. I'm excited that all you guys are still working and active. I'm happy that you have a healthy boo-boo and a lovely marriage, and Mike is always so busy, and Frank is doing what Frank does. You guys are supreme actors, and you are so lovely for coming here. I can't thank you guys enough for spending time with me. I have to kick you off because I have to go to the next block and another block. You know how this works. But I'm just glad that you guys came by. I'll keep you posted on the distribution. The last question I have is, the filmmakers from Art is Alive have been watching all the films from here as well as Art is Alive. So if you'd like, I can transfer your information over to all the filmmakers there, if it's okay, and then they can get a hold of you if they wish to. I just want to make sure that's okay.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yep,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Okay. I will be in touch by email. I'll let you know what he says. I'll let you know what the filmmakers say, but just know that I'm so appreciative. Thank you for spending this hour with me. I can't thank you.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you for having.
Anytime. All right, folks. We'll see you in the virtual world. Well, Facebook and or other places. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good weekend,
All right.
everybody.